Hey, what's going on internet? Josh Noel from Sunduck Film. So we're a film channel and I think it's time that we put together a list of cameras. So these are my top 5 favorite cameras under $3,000 US. Before we begin, I just want to say that this is my opinion and that there's so much more that goes into a video than just the camera. So please keep that in mind as we move forward here. So starting our list at number 5 is the Rebel series camera. So basically the T6i from the T3i. So basically any of those cameras will make up my top 5 because I personally think that this is a phenomenal starter camera for anyone that's starting off in filmmaking or just video producing. And I think it's a phenomenal camera because it has all the basic stuff that you need and you can learn a lot. And the thing is, it's kind of cheap. You can get a T3i for roughly around maybe $350. Of course it's going to be used. But if you want to buy the best, the high-end camera right now, it's going to be $750, which still isn't too bad for a pretty good camera. And basically, it can record 1920 by 1080 video up to 24 frames per second. If you want to shoot 60 frames per second, it'll shoot at 720p. So it's really awesome, and you got a nice ISO range. And the sensor size is nothing to brag about, but it's nothing terrible either. So overall, it's a user-friendly camera, and there's a lot you can learn off of it if you're just starting off in video. Number 4 on my list is the Panasonic GH4. So for $1,300, this is a great camera because one, you get to shoot 4K video, which really isn't something you should jump on the wagon for, but it does shoot 60 frames per second at 1080p, which is awesome, and it does have a decent ISO range just like the Rebel series. But I guess the only really downside to this camera right now is really the sensor size. It's nothing to brag about, but it is a great starter camera. And you can take photos just like the Rebel cameras as well. So it is a great camera for $1,300. So for number 3 on my list is the Blackmagic Cinema camera, which is a camera that I own and I absolutely love this camera. And it is a great camera. I mean, you get to shoot 2.5K raw video, 12-bit raw video to be exact, and that's really awesome. The frame rate isn't beautiful because you only can shoot up to 30 frames per second, so there's no 60. But that's something you just have to compromise with. The ISO range is from 200 to 1600, which isn't great compared to the other cameras on this list because basically this is not a running gun camera. You are expected to work with lighting, so low light situations are not usually your friend. But it does have 13 stops of dynamic range, which is awesome, especially for a camera that only costs $2,000. To have 13 stops of dynamic range is insane. So I absolutely love this camera, and I would not recommend this camera to anyone who's just starting out in filmmaking or video producing. There are a few problems with the camera. I mean, nothing really huge, but if you don't know what you're doing, especially if you're not into color grading or anything like that, this camera could give you a few issues. So this camera is fantastic though if you know what you're doing and you use it correctly, and you can make it look like you shot this stuff on a $12,000 camera. I've seen some footage where the Blackmagic Cinema camera compares to a Red Scarlet, so that's really awesome. Number 2 on my list is the Canon C100, which has a super 35mm sensor, so you have a pretty decent sensor size, and it does record up to 1080p, but it does not record 4K internally, so but that's not a big deal. I do not suggest jumping on the 4K wagon, especially if you're doing like web videos or just commercials, stuff like that. I would not worry about 4K. It does have a max frame rate of 60 frames per second at 1080p, so that's awesome, and it has a really big ISO range, so that's awesome. And then it has 12 stops of dynamic range, which is also pretty good. And then it has XLR audio inputs, which is amazing. So basically you won't have to sync up sound if you're recording audio externally onto another device, which will save you so much time. And then it has some built-in ND filters, which will also save you a lot of money and give you just more control. So overall, the C100 for $2,500 is a fantastic overall, all-around camera. Basically, if you do commercials or you do filmmaking, I mean, if you do pretty much anything with video, this camera will have it all and it's well built. And finally, for number 1, the last camera on my list is the Sony A7S II. And looking at the specs of this camera is just insane. It has a full frame sensor. It shoots 4K video. It has a max frame rate of 120 frames per second at 1080p. And it has a huge ISO range, something that I've never even heard of, 409,000 ISO. That is insane. And then talking about the dynamic range for 14 stops when you shoot with S-Log 3, insane. And then also has a beautiful 14-bit sensor. That feature is awesome. It does not get much better than that, and I would not probably suggest this camera to beginners because there's a lot of things you have to get used to. I mean, it's probably, working with flat footage and utilizing everything that this camera has to offer, but it's a fantastic run and gun camera because one, it's small, and it's fantastic in low light. I mean, this camera is really known for its low light capabilities. And the best part is only $3,000. I mean, $3,000 can be pricey if you're just starting off in filmmaking or video producing, but what you're getting out of this camera is something, which should probably cost more than $10K. So overall, this camera is phenomenal. And that concludes the list for my top 5 favorite cameras under $3,000. I definitely plan on making some review videos for these cameras, so if you haven't already, please consider subscribing to watch those videos. And if you guys disagree with this list, or feel like there's a camera that should be on this list that I don't have on here, please drop a comment down below. Or if you have any questions about why I chose this, I'll be happy to reply to that. And if you guys enjoyed this video, please drop a like. It helps me out tremendously. And guys, thank you so much for watching, and hopefully I'll see you soon.